Good afternoon. My name is Suki Duper. I am the head of EMEA and APAC here at Tamer, and I have the pleasure of talking about AI and insurance with my colleague James. James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, Suki. I'm James, the CTO at Cynozure.
Great, James. As I had sort of introduced the subject, one of the things that I'm sure our listeners are going to be very pertinent, they really want to hear from us is how can insurers leverage AI-driven insights both today and in the future?
Yeah, this is a great topic. I'm spending a lot of my time personally, not just in the insurance space, but across sort of all the customers we work with, talking to them about this topic and helping them shape their strategies and deliver. Before we jump into actual use cases,
Mm.
I think the first thing to do is define AI, because every time someone says AI to me, they normally mean something slightly different. More often than not these days, people hear AI and they go to ChatGPT, large language model type use cases. But I think obviously there's a much broader remit of AI than that. Some of it's been around for a lot longer. Some of it's very well established in the insurance market already as well in terms of its use. So, the way I'm going to be using AI during our discussion today will certainly be in the broadest definition of that term. I often use the analogy of like a brain, where you've got your logical left brain is classic AI use cases that are very deterministic about the outcome. So things like recommendations and predictions and fraud detection kind of workloads. And you've got your right creative brain, which is where our generative AI comes in, where we're working with text, image, video, audio, and we are creating, not just calculating, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, James, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it is good to define what AI is, because AI is different to different people. We've been working at Tamer, we've been working in this space for a long time, so 12 years. And for us, AI it's helping people sort of with data, bring that data together. And absolutely, I totally agree. It can be used as an assistance to the job that you're doing today. It can be used to enhance that your job that you're doing today. But I do think, like as you're alluding to, it does really help in different instances on different use cases in very, very different ways, right? So it is important to sort of put that out there in terms of, not just a general statement, as you've mentioned. Everybody's going to be thinking AI, and the first thing they think is Chat GPT. And talking about that, I mean, I'm sure you've come across this. When you look at sort of the application, especially when it comes to things like call centers and other other parts of the insurance, how do you see AI fitting throughout that journey for an insurer? Doesn't matter what type of insurer, but just how do you see it fitting, and what are you seeing? What trends are you kind of seeing more recently?
So I'm seeing people trying to apply this across the full life cycle of insurance, in both customer-facing applications. You mentioned things like call centers, as well as internal productivity and automation kind of workloads, particularly sort of in the back office and so on, but also more kind of frontline activities. So, there's the stuff that's been there for kind of a long time, maybe to varying degrees of sophistication. But our core risk modeling, pricing kind of workloads has always been something that has leveraged advanced analytical techniques, including in many places machine learning. And if we sort of start there in terms of application of these technologies, that one I think is going to be one of the most interesting, because right now it's almost kind of boring. It's not a huge differentiator for many, but as we look at new techniques, as we look at growing access to data, both third party as well as your own internal data, and third party could be really broad, from open data sets provided by the government, provided by third parties that are collecting information about customers, through to things like sensors, satellite photos, weather data, and so on, depending on the kind of thing you're insuring. As we look at that growing data sets, we're going to be able to start doing increasingly sophisticated modeling and pricing. Ultimately, you can see in that personalization kind of space, while at the moment we're in, cohorts of people, we're looking for
Mm.
identifiers to determine risk and therefore suitable premium pricing. We're going to get to a point, and we're steadily marching there towards hyper personalization, where I'm going to be able to look at you as an individual. And again, depending on the type of insurance, maybe it's health insurance I'm providing you, I'm going to look at all sorts of factors, including your eating habits, your traveling, your work, your stress. Maybe I've got access to your Apple Watch data, and I'm seeing how much sleep you're getting or what your heart rate is doing, and so on. And I'm going to be able to create custom tailored plans and premiums built around you personally.
Mm. Well, that's great. I love the fact that you mentioned sort of third-party data. That's certainly something that we've seen at Tamer, working with our insurance customers, how important that third-party data is, because it's not always the data that you've got internally or the data that's locked up. I know we've had a conversation about sometimes that data is locked up in documents or contracts that were signed a while back, and actually that might be very pertinent to information now. But as we know, in today's day and age, things are changing rapidly. Phone numbers, locations, when it comes to sort of doing that more geographical modeling, what the use of that location is changing. The way people are behaving, or where they're staying, where they're living, the jobs that they do, the families that they're having, and where they're moving to. This is changing on a constant basis. That's where the third-party information is extremely important to bring that into, and to be able to use that. Because as you say, with insurers, and one of the things that I've always felt, sort of working in the data industry for 30 years, that insurers have always been that cutting edge of using machine learning, especially when it comes to risk modeling. So, AI and machine learning shouldn't be new to them, but it's now available to what I call the masses, right? As you say, throughout the process, it can be used in different ways, which I think it's quite exciting, actually, because it's helping people with their jobs. It's helping people understand their customers, the policies, the quotations that they have to give out to much more of a detailed level, with the information that's available. And so what I mean, when we talk about that, one of the things that, we were, how do you see your customers sort of changing, and the people that are asking your advice, is there a particular areas that they're looking at? Or is it really broad? Is there any use cases that you can mention, maybe from even outside the industries, from a different industry, which is pertinent to the work that's being done in the insurance industry today?
Well, if we dip outside insurance, although this applies to insurance as well, I run an AI meetup, just a bunch of senior data leaders getting together and just a really open forum to chat. And we had a session last week, and one of the topics was what's changed in the last year in this space. What are people talking about from the initial excitement of ChatGPT launching and sort of really wowing people with what it could do, might do, and what it might enable, through to today. And what was a consistent theme for everyone, and I've seen this across pretty much all my clients, is a move from big, exciting, transformative ideas into individual productivity and governance. So instead of being like, great, we're going to fully, recreate the industry and do something different. And that stuff is happening. So that, there are examples of that, and it's happening in the industries that are most at threat from disruption from AI. That is a bit more of a do or die type situation. And for everyone else, where it's a less sort of immediate existential threat, this shift into how can I make my teams more productive has become really big. And that's driven by tools like Copilot, for example. Not a week goes by that I'm not talking to someone in our customer base about Copilot and how they can roll it out and the business case. And the business case one always often makes me laugh with Copilot, because I go, whether it's Copilot or some other generative AI tool, Copilot's about £300 a year for a license. If you can't save £300 per person with one of these tools, you're doing something wrong. So the business case on this stuff should write itself. So that individual productivity bit's definitely been a big thing. In fact, I was reading a stat today that was saying that the adoption of these generative AI tools is outstripping PCs and the internet in terms of rate of adoption. And I can't remember actually whether it was just North America or globally, but it was something like a quarter of working adults are now using it every single day to deliver their work. So it's already hugely popular. Making sure it's harnessed effectively by organizations to get that time saving and be really efficient is really important. And that other bit then, the governance bit, whether this is just the people I'm talking to's experience, but a common theme that's coming out that's driven it is failure. So they've tried to do something more exotic, more exciting, and it hasn't worked. And it hasn't worked because they didn't have the right data sets. They didn't have the right quality. They didn't have the right training or whatever it was. So they've taken a step back to go, hang on, let's address some of the fundamentals first, and then come back to some of those bigger ideas of change.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it is that there's the initial excitement and the early adopters that want to change the world. But I do think when it comes to AI, and certainly something I've seen working with our customer base, it's using it in the right place to develop efficiencies, then to get the sort of adoption behind the outcomes that are being delivered from the AI, is allowing them to grow a lot more rather than trying to do the big bang approach. And as you mentioned, one of the sort of key factors, and this will lead me beautifully into the next question. Almost feels like you set me up for this one. When you talk about sort of the key aspects around adoption and people using it in a more sort of team efficient manner, has been around things like data quality and getting the data right in the first place. We see that as Tamer as a very, very important factor. If you get your data right, you can build your customer 360s, your customer views, understand your customer better, whether that be sort of corporations or individuals. The outcome you'll get from your AI initiatives will be stronger. They will drive stronger outcomes, which will allow more adoption. Do you see the same thing happening from your perspective with your clients? Is this a similar conversation that you're having?
Yeah, so definitely. And in some respects, you can go even one step further back and more fundamental than that. That is, yeah, you absolutely need great quality data, and it needs to be structured in the right kind of shapes and formats. But before that, there's an even more fundamental question of, am I collecting the right information? Because I can now do things that a few years ago were inconceivable, and because they were inconceivable, I didn't bother to capture the data because there was no use for it. It would be a waste of effort, time, cost, server space, whatever you want. Now we can start to work with large bodies of texts, images and videos and audio and so on, but also combine other data sets. Yeah, I'm reminded of a London markets insurer I was speaking to who were doing some fleet insurance, and they'd partnered with the makers of in-car sensors, videos, etc., that would track speed and watch the driver, watch the road, and so on. And they were offering, I think it was something like a 30% discount to their customers if they implemented this tool, because they then got the data feeds from it so that they could get a proper view on the risk of their drivers and give them the right kind of pricing. Now, having that data set has enabled them to bring a really competitive and compelling product and offering to market. And the same is going to be true for loads and loads of other data points that to date we've ignored because we couldn't use them. But now suddenly we can, and actually it's going to give us a competitive edge. It's going to allow us to offer new products. It's going to help us re-engage customers. I mean, talking about the third-party data sets, that could be something like gathering planning permission data, finding planning permission that's been approved, linking it to the address, finding out it's your customer and contacting them to see if they need insurance to cover their building works going on, or check if the home's properly secured and safe because they've knocked down a giant hole in the wall or whatever it is. So going even that step back and saying, am I collecting the right stuff? And could I do something different if I did collect the right stuff, is a really good conversation to be having now, especially as we think down the line. Like, we've got some time to go and collect this. So start now. Start thinking about this today.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on that, and I think to me that's the key thing. I've seen it with our clients as well when they've been able to pull in third-party data, let's say government data. They've been able to give a better customer experience. When they've been able to pull in data where they understand telephone numbers have changed, they're able to contact that particular individual, in a, in on the latest phone number that they've got. And I know, and it depends on the region and where you're based, because things change differently. I've had the same phone number for God knows how long, but I know other people, younger people, will change more often, or maybe not. So I think it is important to think about it. And I assume now that the insurers can look at a much more broader range of third-party data. You mentioned things like, Apple Watch data, or
Mhm.
when it comes to, Fitbit data or something along those lines, or like you've just mentioned, planning permission. Can I go to local government and get information from the local government, because that data is available when someone puts planning permission in. So it is interesting, like as you say, it is the right moment now to collect that data. It is the right moment now to build those views so that you can use it to do more, as you quite rightly put it, more exotic use cases when it comes to AI. Because as you can imagine, this train's already left the station, so it's only going to get
Yeah.
stronger, right? So those models are going to get stronger, and whether it's, as you mentioned, sort of OpenAI, ChatGPT, or Claude, or we're talking, AWS and Meta are building one, and Google are building one. So you're going to have all these competing models which you can use to make work better, make it more efficient, I think is the key thing. One of the other sort of areas that I was interesting sort of understanding, whilst all this AI is coming into place, whilst you're hearing all these conversations, are you hearing any sort of challenging conversations? We've heard the sort of the EU AI actors come out, so we've heard like there's governance. There's always been, in the time I've worked at Tama, and we've been talking about AI, there's always been this slight fear around trusting the machine and trusting the
Yeah.
technology. How often do you get involved in those conversations? And is that a real sort of area of concern, or how do you educate people around that?
So that comes up all the time, and it's important to put it into the context of the use case, because
Mm-hmm.
some use cases elicit more concern. Often the ones that, for example, are customer facing, where you've got a direct interface, so a call center, a chatbot, etc., that you hand over to an AI agent to deal with, versus an internal use case where you are in a much safer space and in control, and nothing can go horribly wrong. What I found that, if we look at the two extreme ends of that spectrum, had a specialty insurance client of ours that was looking at a operational efficiency kind of use case in their back office. So amongst other things, they do reinsurance, and they have to classify the descriptions of buildings that they get, which are normally in English. It's a wooden frame building when it's got a slate roof and brick walls and whatever else it says about it. And it's got to go into one of 150 standard categories. And they've got a lot of properties, as you might imagine. So it's a very large manual effort to be categorizing these things. Now, their innovation director came up with the idea of, I want to try and see how well a large language model could do this job versus a human. And because it was under that innovation banner, it was a really safe space to test it out. And it came with an understanding from the very beginning of that project that this might not work. And an end result of this might be, it doesn't work, and we've proved it doesn't work, and let's not waste any more time on this for now. We'll revisit it when these things get better, more sophisticated. Now, as it was, that did work pretty well. I think we hit about an 80% versus a human on a match rate there, and that was in kind of a week of development effort. So that kind of innovation space and things bracketed around that, great, way less concern, internal, not facing. The other end of the spectrum, though, customer facing, becomes a lot more problematic, and people's concerns often fall into 2 or 3 different categories there. So one is, it's going to go wrong. So whether it's a hallucination and it's going to give wrong advice, and we've seen these examples, the Canadian airline that gave the wrong bereavement policy to a customer. So they went and they took its advice and they bought a ticket and they tried to get their money back later. They couldn't get their money back, and the airline tried to say, well, it's not our fault that the chatbot said that, and they lost, and they had to pay the fines and so on and take the reputational damage. So you've got that element of it, of, well, what if it misleads a customer, and whether that is reputational damage, whether that causes us to lose a customer, whether that takes us to court and in some kind of litigation. That's one concern. Another is in that regulatory space. So with things like the EU AI Act coming along, and insurance as a category falling into the high risk grouping in there, we suddenly have higher standards that are expected when it comes to explainability. When it comes to actually understanding of individuals, so everyone involved in these processes needs to have a level of AI education and understanding of what's happening. So that kind of stuff also puts a burden on organizations to up the skill knowledge and level in there, lest they be open to regulatory action. So those customer facing ones, it really then becomes a risk reward, which theoretically insurers should be pretty good at making those kind of decisions, to say, what is the likelihood of a problem here, and if it does happen, how bad is it going to be? Because Klarna, I think, is the biggest and best example of this out there. So Klarna, the buy now pay later website add-on that you might have seen on many retail websites, they have AI chatbots doing the jobs of 700 people. The handling time has gone down from 11 minutes to 2 minutes. The customer satisfaction has stayed at the same level. There's a 25% reduction in the number of repeat visits. And they've reduced their overall staff headcount now by something like 1,200 people and are looking to continue that down, not through layoffs, but just allowing natural attrition and replacing with these tools. So there are some potentially really big wins with this stuff. Now, the caveat that goes with that is a very nice press release that looks really good. But I don't know if their customer satisfaction was at a 1 out of 10 and it stayed at a 1 out of 10 with AI, or whether it was a 10 out of 10 and it stayed at a 10 out of 10. So, there are, when you see these things out there, you have to be a bit careful to take them at face value. But those customer facing use cases definitely raise fears around the sort of regulatory and legal implications and the mistakes that cause brand damage, loss of customers, poor customer experience, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think like for us at Tame, we deal with customer data, right? So we are kind of using machine learning on customer data to bring that data together. So we recognize some of those challenges, some of those. I love the way you put it. When it's done in a safe environment, it's easier to get it's easier to get around some of that fear that you might have of the AI when it's done in more of an open environment and its end user interaction. But I think there's a point you raised which is extremely important. It's around education, both sides, right? So whether it's your customer or your customer's customer, educating them that we are using AI and these are the pitfalls of us using it, but we are passing on those efficiencies that we are gaining from this in order to speed up that time. As you're saying, that time's being reduced. There's also the education of the AI itself, which is important. It's not a magic bullet. You're not just going to put, you're not just going to get a chatbot out of the box and get it up and running and it's going to give you the perfect answers. It also needs educating. And once it's educating, it performs better. It's kind of, you still need to, now it gets educated faster than a human would, right? But at the same time, you still need to educate it, feed it the examples, feed it good quality examples, feed it good quality sort of data again, so that it can actually represent you in the best possible way. So I do think, there is this journey that we're still going on, that both the regulators are helping in terms of making sure that we've got the governance in place, but also as we're dealing with our customers, our respective customers, taking them on this journey of artificial intelligence, which, as you say, it didn't start today, or it didn't start, even when you look at OpenAI, they didn't, when they actually gave ChatGPT to us, it had taken 7 years to develop, right? And
well, it was 3.5 wasn't it, by then already? It wasn't 1 or 0.1. Yeah.
Exactly that, and I think that's something that all of our customers need to appreciate, that it's not a silver bullet that's going to give you the answer straight away. It's something that needs time, and as you say, use it for the right use cases. I think that's an important factor. Just as a sort of closing last remark, I know we're coming up to time. How do you see sort of the future developing with AI? I mean, I know it's exciting times. I mean, I love being in this industry, and I'm looking forward to where we're going to get to by the time I retire in a few years' time, hopefully. But where do you think we're heading when it comes to insurance and AI?
Big question. Lots of things I could pick out there. I think perhaps one overarching trend that impacts insurance just as it really does anyone else is the increasing commoditization of this stuff. So what I mean by that is, increasingly, I am going to buy out of the box models. It is going to be integrated into my CRM system, my finance system, my insert tool that I already use, much like Copilot is embedding into Office, for example. And that's going to give insurers a choice to make about, well, what do I build versus what do I buy? And actually, probably the answer is going to be, for most, there will be a solution that you can buy and fine tune. And therefore, one of the really important things to focus on right now is, like we were talking about earlier, think about the use cases that you might want to deliver in future. Think about the data that you might need to deliver those use cases, and then go after getting that, so that by the time you can do this stuff easily, you've got the right inputs, because ultimately the data that you've got that no one else has got, that's the thing that's going to give you the biggest edge, and that's going to differentiate you from your opponents, because we're all going to have access to the same level of tools, tech and sophistication, but only you are going to have your data sets.
Agreed. And I know we're sort of coming up to time, so I'll wrap it up. But I will say I absolutely agree with you, because I mean, I was reading a report, and this was a couple of years back, which was talking about humans are going to be generating 7.2 petabytes of data a second, right? And 90% of that data is going to be repeated data about an individual or a subject. So the data's out there. And as you say, let's get that, the sooner you kind of bring it together, sooner you kind of build those views, have that information available, the more you can do with it and the better experience you can give your end customers. So I absolutely agree with you. It's a great time now to be able to go and look at it that particular way, go and find that data, go and think about what kind of information, what kind of attributes, what kind of individual sort of bits of information do you need to make the journey even more better for the individuals that you're dealing with, or corporations, or whatever type of insurance you're providing. James, thank you very much for spending the time with me. I know we could probably go on for hours. Like, this is just scratching the surface of AI and insurance right now. It's been great talking to you. And to the audience, if you want to sort of follow up and have another conversation, or reach out to us, you'll find our details at the end of this particular presentation. And yeah, please visit our website. So it's tamer.com for my website, or my company's website, and Cynozure.com for James's company's website. So I would, happy to talk to anybody about AI and about insurance as well. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Suki.